The crash. John, Mike, and Sarah were astronauts on a special mission. Their spaceship, Odyssey, was traveling through the deepest part of space. The inside of the ship was silent. Only the hum of the engines could be heard. Outside the windows, stars sparkled like diamonds on a black sea. John was the captain. He was looking at the screen in front of him. Everything was normal. Mike, the engineer, was checking the ship's controls. Sarah, the scientist, was studying some strange signals on her tablet. They all felt excited, but also a little nervous. This was a new part of the universe. No one had ever been here before. Suddenly, the ship's lights began to flicker. The screens turned red, and a loud alarm rang out. The ship started shaking as if something was pulling it. Mike grabbed the controls, trying to keep the ship steady. "What's happening?" Sarah shouted. John tried to contact mission control on Earth, but the radio was full of static. "We've lost contact," he said. On the main screen, a strange purple energy wave was moving straight towards them. It looked beautiful, but also dangerous. The energy wave hit the ship with a bright flash. The Odyssey spun out of control. The astronauts were thrown from their seats. John's head hit the side of his chair. Mike tried to restart the engines, but nothing worked. The ship was falling fast, spinning towards a planet below. The planet looked blue and green, with clouds swirling in the atmosphere. Sarah shouted, "Brace for impact." The ground was coming closer and closer. The ship crashed into a thick jungle with a loud boom. Trees broke and leaves flew everywhere. The Odyssey finally stopped moving. The only sound was the crackle of broken wires and the astronauts breathing hard. For a few seconds, nobody moved. Then John opened his eyes and checked his team. "Is everyone okay?" he asked. Mike nodded, rubbing his shoulder. Sarah's face was pale, but she was safe. The inside of the ship was a mess. Wires hung from the ceiling. Smoke was rising from one of the control panels. Their communication system was completely dead. John's heart was pounding. He had trained for emergencies, but this was different. They were alone on a strange planet, far from home. "We need to get out and check the ship," John said. Mike opened the main door. Warm, fresh air rushed inside. The three astronauts stepped out of the Odyssey and looked around. They were in the middle of a thick, alien jungle. The trees were tall and glowing softly with blue and pink light. The leaves were huge and shaped like hands. Strange flowers grew everywhere. Some of them turned to follow the astronauts as they walked. The sky was not blue like Earth's. It was a deep, shining purple. Sarah took a deep breath. "The air is safe to breathe," she said. That was good news, but everything else felt wrong. The jungle was full of sounds, soft singing, whispers, and the rustle of leaves. Mike tried his radio, but there was no signal. He hit it in frustration. "We're cut off," he said. John checked his map, but the computer could not find their location. "This place is not in any star chart," he said. "It's like this planet doesn't exist." Suddenly, Sarah heard something behind a bush. She turned quickly, but nothing was there. The strange singing grew louder, and the shadows began to move between the trees. John and Mike noticed it too. Someone or something was watching them. They walked carefully, searching for tools or anything that could help them repair the ship. The jungle seemed to close in around them. The shadows moved closer, but always out of sight. Then, Sarah pointed towards the glowing flowers. "Look," she whispered. Through the thick trees they saw strange shapes. The shadows were tall and graceful, moving without making a sound. The astronauts stopped. Their hearts beat faster. Suddenly, from behind a big tree, a group of beautiful alien women appeared. They had long hair that shone in the strange light. Their skin glowed softly, almost like the flowers. Their eyes were bright and curious. They wore clothes made of silver and gold, which sparkled in the purple sun. The alien women watched the astronauts without speaking. They moved closer, slowly and carefully, as if they did not want to scare the strangers. The astronaut stood very still, too shocked to speak. One of the alien women stepped forward. She smiled gently, but her eyes were serious. She said something in a language that sounded like music. John shook his head, trying to understand. Suddenly, she spoke again, this time in slow, simple English. "Welcome, travelers. Do not be afraid." John, Mike, and Sarah looked at each other. Where were they? Who were these women? And what did they want? As the sun set and the jungle filled with glowing lights, the astronauts realized they had landed in a place more mysterious than they ever imagined. The adventure was just beginning. Asterisk for a moment. Time stood still. The astronauts and the alien women stared at each other, the quiet only broken by the strange, musical sounds of the jungle. None of them knew what would happen next. Suddenly, the ground beneath the astronauts' feet began to glow in soft blue patterns, as if the very earth wanted to greet them. John looked down in shock. The glowing lines formed strange symbols he could not read. Mike reached out to touch the light, but it faded away at his fingertips. The alien women stepped closer, moving with such perfect grace that it almost looked like they were floating. The leader, who had spoken before, smiled gently. "You are safe here," she said again, her voice calm and clear. "Come with us. The Queen is waiting." John nodded slowly. He still did not trust these strangers, but they had no other choice. The ship was damaged, and this world was full of things they did not understand. The women led the astronauts through the glowing jungle. Flowers opened as they passed, releasing sweet scents into the air. Strange birds with crystal wings flew overhead, singing soft songs. The path twisted and turned, sometimes disappearing altogether, but the women always seemed to know the way. Sarah whispered to John, "It's like a dream, but I'm afraid to wake up." As they walked, more alien women appeared between the trees. All of them were beautiful, but each in a different way. Some were tall and slender, others shorter with bright, laughing eyes. They all watched the astronauts with curiosity and excitement, as if visitors from another world were a rare and special event. Finally, the group reached the edge of the jungle. Before them stood a shining city, built from glass, crystal, and silver metal. Towers rose high into the purple sky, connected by floating bridges and glowing lights. Waterfalls poured from one building to another, their streams sparkling in the air. The astronauts gasped. They had never seen anything like it. Even on Earth, no city was so beautiful, so perfect. But as they walked closer, Sarah noticed something strange. "Where are the men?" she whispered. Every person they passed was a woman, some working, some talking, some playing music or painting in the open courtyards. Not one man was anywhere in sight. The women led the astronauts into a great hall made of blue glass. At the end of the hall, on a raised seat, sat a woman more beautiful and powerful looking than the rest. She wore a crown made of living flowers, and her eyes shone like stars. This was the Queen. The astronauts were asked to stand before her. The leader of the women, Lyra, introduced herself and the others. "We found them in the jungle," she said to the Queen, "lost and alone." The Queen stood up and looked at the astronauts. Her voice was deep and kind, but there was something hidden in her eyes. "Welcome to Valoria," she said. "You are far from home, but you are safe here." John tried to speak, but the Queen raised her hand. "We know you have many questions, but for now you must rest. You are our guests. Tonight we celebrate your arrival. Tomorrow we talk." The women led the astronauts to beautiful rooms filled with soft beds and glowing lights. Delicious food waited on the table, strange fruits, warm bread, and drinks that sparkled like stars. As John, Mike, and Sarah sat down to eat, they whispered together. "Something's not right," Mike said. "Why are we the only men here? Why are they so interested in us?" Sarah looked out the window at the glowing city. "I don't know," she said. but I think we're part of something much bigger than we realize." As night fell, the city of Valoria glowed with 1,000 lights. Music drifted through the air, and laughter echoed from the courtyards. But inside their rooms, the astronauts could not shake the feeling that they were being watched. And somewhere, deep in the city, someone was waiting for them. Someone who did not want them to ever leave. That night, John could not sleep. The bed was soft, the air was warm, and the city outside glowed like a dream. But something felt wrong. Shadows moved past his window. He heard soft footsteps in the halls, always stopping when he listened. He decided to look around. Quietly, he left his room and walked down the empty hallways. The floor was smooth like glass, and his footsteps echoed. He passed tall doors with golden signs, but every time he tried to open one, it was locked. Suddenly, he heard voices in the distance, soft, gentle, but with a hint of fear. He followed them to a balcony and looked down. In the courtyard below, groups of women were talking in circles, sometimes glancing up at the windows. John quickly stepped back, but not before he noticed something strange. One woman was crying, and the others tried to comfort her. He could not hear their words, but the sadness on her face was clear. Elsewhere, Mike woke up and found that the door to his room was open. He stepped outside and saw two women standing at the end of the hall. They smiled and whispered something to each other, then quickly walked away. Mike followed, hoping to find answers. He moved quietly, passing through the shining halls and open courtyards. He reached a room with bright lights and soft music. Inside, Sarah was already sitting with a group of women who called themselves the artists. They painted pictures of strange animals and places, using brushes that glowed. In the dark, one of the women handed Sarah a painting, 3 stick figures, lost in a jungle under a purple sky. Sarah thanked her, but the woman only smiled sadly. Mike sat down next to Sarah and whispered, "Have you seen any men here?" Sarah shook her head. "No, only women everywhere. And everyone is watching us." As the night passed, more secrets appeared. In every corner of the city, rules were everywhere. The astronauts were told not to leave their rooms after midnight. They could not enter certain gardens or buildings. Each time they asked, why, the answer was always, "For your safety." The next morning, Lyra came to their rooms. Her face was friendly, but her eyes looked tired. "The Queen wants to see you," she said. The 3 astronauts followed her through the winding halls to a room filled with mirrors and moving lights. The Queen was waiting, dressed in silver, her crown shining brighter than before. She asked them simple questions. "Who are you? Why did you come? Where is your home?" John answered honestly, but the Queen only nodded, never showing her thoughts. Finally, Mike asked, "Why are there no men in your city?" The Queen smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "Men are rare here," she said softly. "Long ago something happened. Now men only visit. They never stay for long." The astronauts looked at each other. What happened to them? Sarah asked. The Queen stood up, her long dress trailing behind her. "This is a safe place. Please enjoy our city. But remember, some secrets are not for visitors to know." With that, she left the room, and the doors closed behind her. After the meeting, John, Mike, and Sarah were given a tour of the city. They saw gardens full of strange glowing trees. They visited libraries with books that spoke when touched. They watched children learning with floating puzzles and teachers who moved objects with only their minds. It was a place of beauty and wonder, but behind every smile was a secret, and behind every rule, a warning. Late in the day, Sarah found a garden behind a locked door. The sign said, "No entry." She pressed her ear to the door and heard soft singing, a song so sad that it made her eyes fill with tears. She called for John and Mike. Together, they promised to find out the truth. "We can't leave until we understand what is happening here," John said, as the sun set over the shining city. The astronauts realized that they were not just visitors. They were part of a mystery much deeper than they thought. And somewhere, in the shadows, someone was watching every step they took. Sarah could not forget the sad song she heard from the Forbidden Garden. The memory stayed in her mind like a puzzle she needed to solve. That night, as the city lights dimmed and most people slept, Sarah sat by her window, thinking. Suddenly, she noticed a shadow moving near the garden door, the very door marked "No Entry." Quietly, she slipped out of her room and followed the shadow down the empty hall. The air was cool and heavy with the scent of strange flowers. The city was silent, except for the soft humming from the power crystals in the walls. As Sarah got closer, she saw a young alien woman, her hair glowing faintly in the dark. The woman glanced around nervously, then tapped a pattern on the garden door. It slid open with a silent click. Before the door closed, Sarah hurried forward and slipped inside. Inside the secret garden, the world was different. The trees glowed white instead of blue. The flowers did not move or sing. There were strange statues everywhere, men made of stone, frozen in different poses. Some looked happy. Some looked afraid. Sarah's heart pounded. She hid behind a bush as the young woman knelt by a statue and began to cry. "You should not be here," the woman whispered, as if she sensed Sarah's presence. "This place is full of sad memories." Sarah stood up slowly, not wanting to frighten her. "What happened here?" she asked in a gentle voice. The woman looked at Sarah with wide, shining eyes. "Long ago, our city was full of men. But something went wrong. Now every man who comes to Valoria cannot leave. They become part of the garden, forever frozen." Sarah stepped back in shock. "What do you mean? Why does this happen?" "It is the Queen's curse," the woman whispered. "She says it keeps us safe, but many of us do not believe her. We dream of freedom, of meeting others from the stars. That's why some of us help strangers quietly in secret." Sarah realized they were in great danger. "My friends and we need to leave. Can you help us?" Before the woman could answer, loud footsteps echoed outside. The garden door opened wide, and 2 royal guards entered. Their eyes flashed with blue light. "No one is allowed here," one shouted. They grabbed Sarah's arm, pulling her away from the garden. The young woman tried to speak, but the guards silenced her with a cold glare. Sarah was taken through the dark halls, past sleeping courtyards and glowing fountains, and thrown into a small locked room. The walls were smooth and cold. There was no window, only a tiny light in the ceiling. She felt alone and afraid. Meanwhile, John and Mike were also having a strange night. They tried to sleep, but both woke up after the city's bells rang quietly in the distance. John looked out his window and saw a flash of light from the garden. He guessed something was wrong. Mike whispered, "I think Sarah's in trouble. We need to find her." They crept through the city, avoiding the guards. Every corner seemed to have eyes. Finally, they reached the garden but found the door locked tight. They heard voices inside, guards talking about a human girl, the Queen's anger, and a warning that tomorrow would bring a lesson for the visitors. John's face went pale. "They're planning something bad," he said. The next morning, all 3 astronauts were brought before the Queen. Her face was colder now, her voice sharp. "You were told not to break the rules. Valoria is a place of beauty, but also of law. All secrets must be kept." The Queen looked at Sarah. "You went to the Forbidden Garden. You saw what should never be seen." Sarah's voice trembled, but was brave. "Why do you keep your own people prisoners? Why do you turn visitors into stone?" The Queen's eyes glowed with power. "This is not your world, Sarah. You will stay here forever like all the others." The room filled with guards ready to take the astronauts away. But just as they were about to be dragged out, the young woman from the garden rushed in. She shouted, "Wait!" They can help us. They can break the curse. For a second, the whole city seemed to hold its breath. John, Mike, and Sarah looked at each other with hope. Maybe, just maybe, they had found a way to escape and to help Veloria find its freedom. The great hall was darker than before. Shadows danced on the high walls. John, Mike, and Sarah stood together in the center, hands bound with glowing ropes. Guards stood on all sides. The queen sat on her throne, her eyes cold and sharp, but there was a hint of worry in her voice. Without a word, the queen raised her hand. The floor shimmered, and a round table of clear crystal rose from the ground. Strange objects appeared on the table, tiny cubes, spinning coins, and small cards with symbols. The queen smiled, but it was not a kind smile. "Welcome to my game," she said, her voice echoing in the hall. "Here in Veloria, every secret has a price. You broke our oldest law. Now you must play for your future. If you win, you may ask one question, any question, and I must answer honestly. If you lose, you will join the others in the garden forever." The astronauts glanced at each other. Sarah's hands trembled, but she nodded. "We will play," John answered. They had no choice. The game began. The queen's guards circled the table, their faces hidden under silver masks. The queen pushed the cubes toward John. "Roll the truth," she said. The cubes glowed and rolled across the table, stopping to show a picture of a door. Mike had to choose a coin and flip it in the air. It spun for a long time, landing on a strange symbol, a crack in a mirror. The queen nodded, almost pleased. Sarah was given a card with the shape of a key. She turned it over and saw a drawing of the secret garden with a hidden door. The queen asked questions with every turn. "Why did you come to our world? What do you fear the most? What secret would you keep from everyone else?" Each answer seemed to make the queen stronger, her eyes glowing brighter. The hall filled with whispers, as if the city itself was listening. Finally, John asked, "Why do you turn visitors into stone?" The queen's smile faded. "Long ago, men brought war and pain to Veloria," she said. "To protect my people, I made a law no man may leave, for their greed brings darkness." Her voice cracked just a little with sadness. Mike said softly, "Not all men are the same. You cannot punish everyone for what a few have done." The queen's hands trembled. She looked at the young woman from the garden, who stood at the edge of the room, eyes full of hope. The queen closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "You have won my game," she said quietly. "You may ask your question." Sarah spoke quickly. "How do we break the curse?" For a long moment, the queen said nothing. Then she stood up and walked slowly to the table. She placed a crystal key on the surface. "Someone pure of heart must carry this key into the garden at sunrise. The curse will break if the city chooses freedom over fear. But beware, the city itself may try to stop you." The ropes fell from the astronauts' hands. The guards stepped back, uncertain. The queen's voice was tired. "You have until sunrise. Choose wisely." As the queen left the hall, John, Mike, and Sarah gathered around the young woman from the garden. "Will you help us?" Sarah asked. The woman nodded bravely. "I will show you the secret path. But we must hurry. The city is waking up." Behind them, the crystal table cracked down the middle, and the floor began to shake. The city of Veloria was not ready to let its secrets go without a fight. The city of Veloria was no longer silent. A strange wind moved through the glass streets, and the lights inside the crystal towers flickered as if warning of a coming storm. In a quiet corner of the palace, John, Mike, Sarah, and their secret ally, the young woman from the Forbiddens garden, gathered around the crystal key. The woman's name was Mira, and she moved quickly, whispering instructions. "The queen has given you a chance, but the city will not. Its mind is older than the queen. It knows when rules are broken." Suddenly, the walls trembled. The queen's guards hurried past, shouting orders. Far away, a deep bell began to ring. A sound like thunder underwater. We must go now, Mira urged. If the sun rises before we reach the garden, the curse will last forever. John nodded. We need a distraction, he said. Mike remembered the glass fountains he had seen on their tour. I can overload the power crystals, he said. If the fountains burst, the guards will come running. While Mira led Sarah toward a secret passage behind a waterfall, Mike slipped away. He moved fast, hands shaking as he opened the fountain's control box and crossed the glowing wires. With a crackle, sparks flew, and the water exploded upward, raining glass and shimmering light everywhere. Guards ran to stop the chaos, shouting and waving silver sticks that sent blue sparks into the air. John and Mike slipped through the confusion, heading for the secret tunnel. Inside the tunnel, the air was cold and heavy. Strange symbols glowed on the walls, pulsing like a heartbeat. Mira moved ahead, carrying the crystal key. We must not speak here, she whispered. The city listens. Halfway through the tunnel, the floor began to move. Stone hands reached from the walls, trying to grab their feet. Sarah almost screamed, but Mira pulled her forward. Do not be afraid. The curse cannot touch a pure heart, she said. At the tunnel's end, a door waited, carved from black glass. Mira pressed the crystal key into a hidden slot, and the door slid open with a deep sigh. Suddenly, an alarm screamed across Valoria. The city's towers turned red, and the Queen's voice echoed through the streets. The strangers must not reach the garden. Stop them at any cost. As John, Mike, Sarah, and Mira raced into the Forbidden Garden, the city itself began to change. Trees twisted, blocking paths. Vines grew fast, trying to trap their legs. Ghostly faces appeared in the windows, watching. Without blinking, Mike grabbed a fallen branch and fought through the vines. John lifted Sarah over a wall of moving flowers. Mira whispered words in her language, and the stone statues in the garden seemed to blink, their eyes following the group. Just when it seemed they would be caught, a bright light burst through the garden gate. The Queen herself, looking both angry and sad. Behind her, more guards rushed forward, but Mira stepped forward, holding the crystal key high. We want freedom. The time for fear is over, she cried. A storm of light and sound exploded through the garden. The curse fought to stay, but the crystal key shone brighter. The Queen fell to her knees, and the guards covered their faces. John, Mike, and Sarah ran to the center of the garden. Mira placed the key into a stone pedestal. The earth shook. The statues began to crack. In that moment, as the sun rose over Valoria, the curse was breaking, but the battle was not over yet. The city screamed one last warning, and the astronauts realized they had only seconds to escape. Sunlight crashed into the garden like a wave, turning every shadow gold. As the first rays hit the crystal key, the entire city of Valoria trembled, its towers glowing, its streets shaking, its people frozen in place, watching for a heartbeat. All was quiet. Then the curse screamed. The stone statues cracked and split open. From each, a man stepped out, blinking in the bright morning light. Some fell to their knees and wept. Others stared in wonder at the sky, free after so many years. The garden filled with shouts of joy, but also with fear. The city was not ready to let go. Suddenly, black vines burst from the ground, lashing at John, Mike, Sarah, and Mira. The garden twisted, paths disappearing beneath moving roots. Go, now! Mira shouted. She ran ahead, clearing the way with the crystal key, which glowed brighter with every step. But at the garden gate, the Queen stood tall, blocking their escape. Her crown of flowers had wilted, her eyes full of pain. You have broken the oldest law, she said. Valoria will fall if you leave. John stepped forward, his voice steady but kind. You don't have to rule with fear. Let your people choose their own future. For a moment, the Queen hesitated. All around, the women of Valoria gathered, watching, Some cried. Some looked angry. But more and more, they began to chant, "Let them go. Let us choose." The city itself fought back. The air turned heavy. The towers groaned. Shards of glass flew through the garden, slicing the air. Mike grabbed Sarah and dove for cover. Mira stood beside the queen, tears on her cheeks. "Please, Your Majesty," Mira begged. "This is the only way. Free them. Free us all." The queen fell to her knees, exhausted. The crystal key slipped from her hand and rolled to Sarah's feet. Sarah picked it up and held it high, her face shining in the golden light dot. In that instant, a great wind blew through Valoria. The curse shattered. The black vines turned to dust. The sky brightened. The city grew still and silent, waiting. Queen looked up, her face softer. "Go," she whispered. "Your path home is open." The garden gate swung wide, revealing a road lined with all the people of Valoria, women and newly freed men, cheering and crying. Mira hugged Sarah tightly. "You have given us a second chance." John, Mike, and Sarah ran back to their ship, with Mira guiding them through the last twisting streets. As they reached the crash site, they saw something amazing. The Odyssey, repaired by the city's magic, ready to fly again. With a final wave, the astronauts climbed aboard. Mira stood beneath the purple sky, surrounded by her people, hope shining. In her eyes dot as the ship lifted off. Valoria glowed below like a jewel in the sunlight. In space, the three friends looked back one last time. "We'll never forget this place," Mike said softly, "or the lesson it taught us." Sarah added. John set a course for home. The stars opened before them, bright and endless. They had survived Valoria, broken the curse, and helped a lost world find freedom. But as they traveled through the dark, they wondered what other secrets were still waiting out there among the stars. The adventure was over, but the story would live forever.